I turn the floor over to our speaker. Let me introduce her. As a full-time teacher in the fashion marketing department at Collège La Salle, Heather Sorella is also a full-time PhD candidate completing her doctoral thesis on the challenges and barriers adult learners, specifically non-traditional mature women, face when deciding to return to post-secondary education. Enjoy the webinar, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're having a nice afternoon. The weather is wonderful to come to our first webinar. Okay.
In English.
In English.
Yeah.
In English, yes, in English. So I'm glad that everybody's here. The topic today is my research on mature students when they return to school, specifically women. As being one of these mature students going back to school, it came upon me that, yes, as a teacher, it was one thing to be the teacher in the classroom, but returning as a student had many challenges. So what I'd like to talk to you today about are the challenges that women face, especially mature women. So if you'd like to have question me or have some comments, that's really good. I believe in comments and examples. So if any of you are thinking about going back to school or have gone back to school, and tell us a little bit about how your experience was, this would be really good for us to, have a great discussion together. This is an interactive webinar, so your comments are very important so that we can share it with everyone. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is share my screen with you. And again, like a teacher, right, I'm going to, here we go, I'm going to share my screen here with you. I'm finding it here on the bottom. Okay, here we go. I just want to make sure I tested this before, so I wanted to make sure that I'm okay here. Okay, I'm going here. Okay, so here's my show. All right, so share. All right, so I'm not taking everything out of this PowerPoint today because we're going to be looking at it in parts. The reason this is very detailed is because I wanted you to have a lot of information that you could take a look at, perhaps in the future or perhaps something that interests you. So right now what I'm going to talk about. So again, I'm from Collège La Salle. I've been at the college for 17 years. And the new thing that we've discovered that we have a lot more adult learners coming into our school. So again, what I'd like us to do is we're going to be discussing the experience and expectations of non-traditional adult learners. The thing about this is that I don't know about at the colleges you're at, but are you expecting and having more adult learners coming into your classroom? We at Collège La Salle are having an influx of mature students coming in with their expectations and their experiences, which sometimes can lead teachers to be a little bit perplexed of how to handle these students. Okay, is it advancing? You got this one now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things we have to think about, again, I'm not going to be reading everything out to you, but there's a difference between adult education and the education of adults. Because the thing when a lot of us during COVID, when we were home, a lot of people went online and they started learning stuff themselves, and they were learning how to cook and how to read special types of different languages. So a lot of people did the education of adults. It's a non-formal way of learning. However, because we're always thinking about lifelong learning, a lot of people decided, wow, I really like to learn. I like to come back and learn different things. So this is why we had an influx of more adult learners coming back to school, which is great because it's very important that adults come back and become more involved with lifelong learning. And this is something that I believe, and this was one of the reasons that I went back to school, is there's always two reasons people go back to school. It could be for personal growth, or it can also be for, career opportunities. Each has their own reasons, but we have to look at why. Most of the students that are coming back into our programs are there for career opportunities. But the funny thing about that is their career opportunities often lead them to personal growth. So this is something I want us to talk about also. A lot of people ask me, why are you so involved with personal growth? And a lot of my research is based on that, and my field research, which is going to start in the winter, is looking at women that have gone back to school and how it has changed them. So this is the core of the going back to school for mature students. And for many of you, and we can have this discussion, or if you'd like to have some kind of input right now, if you did decide to go back to school at a later age, did you find that you had some type of a transformation or a change, independence, autonomy, and how you felt better about the world around you? One of the things we have to think about is the definition of pedagogy versus andragogy. A lot of us here are pedagogues, and that word sticks around, and we have pedagogical conventions, and we have all kinds of things that have the starting point of pedagogy. However, when we're working with adult learners, they learn differently. All right. So pedagogy, the students only need to learn what they need, what the teacher's teaching them. So, the student walks in the classroom, teacher tells them what to do, and they give it back to them the way the teacher wants, right? But how far can we go with that? Right now, with the student-centered approach that we have in most of our colleges, the students, their input is so important, and they give you back what you're telling them in their own version. So we have to think about also the teacher's concept of learning is that of a dependent personality. So this is what I'm telling you, and this is what you're going to believe. So I'm sure there's a lot of you right now that have students that kind of disagree with the things that you say. And we have to realize now with all the tools they have around them, they don't have a problem saying, well, I read this on the internet, or I read this on Wikipedia, and you're wrong. So we have to realize that. So I'm going to continue here. So when we think about andragogy, I think it really goes not only to adult learners, but young emerging learners also. They have to think about too much of learning consists of someone else's experience and knowledge. We cannot have students just regurgitating what we tell them. One of the first scholars was Lindman, and we talk about Knowles. Knowles is very strong in the research on when we think about adult learning. But it started in the early 1920s, and we have to think about names like Dewey, think of Lindman, Knowles, Mesereau. We have to think about all these scholars, but one thing they had in common is that they wanted students to become independent thinkers. So perhaps you have some in your classrooms that are independent thinkers. They question you, they pick your brain, like we say. I enjoy these type of students because you know what? It makes a really engaging and active surrounding for us. Continue. So who is the adult learner, and what are their expectations? Okay. Is the adult learner in your orbit at your school? Do you have a lot of adult learners? Any of you? Maybe you want to add that or think about it.
You can use the chat.
Yeah, so think about the percentage that are coming into your schools. How many of them are adult learners, and what are they expecting from you? Okay. So the population of students returning to higher education is changing. Undergraduates in Canada are studying less. Maybe some of you realize that. You're a young traditional student who does the trajectory from kindergarten to high school, and then from high school they go off to university, or maybe they're going into a technical program, that complete trajectory. But what about those people that took a break, where life happened, where they had to stop, and then they decided it's time to go back? So these are the students that we're talking about in our classrooms. Often called self-directed non-traditional students, adult learners are older, more diverse, and have different responsibilities and expectations than the younger traditional students. In addition, they carry past experiences into the classroom, and their specific characteristics must be explored. Last week, I went to Concordia University, where I have a small space because as a PhD candidate in my research, I need to be near my supervisor. And when I went to the building, it's right there on St. Catherine between Guy and I don't know the street. So well, let's say near Guy, near the bulk barn, okay? And I found there was no one there. And I said, well, where are the students? I thought there'd be more younger students there, and the place was empty. So I ran into another student that I knew. He was a classmate of mine when we were in a course and when we did the core courses together. And I said, what happened to everybody? And he said, well, many of the students have taken a sabbatical. or they've stopped and they're thinking about it. And I said, wow, this is very different. Because when you're thinking of a person that's going back to school with either the reasons of personal growth or the reasons of career opportunities, or the momentum is there. So when I think of young traditional students, I think of the trajectory. And when I think of the adult learners, I think more of momentum. So this is why we think of them as, non-traditional. They have their expectations when they come in your class. They're self-directed. They know what they want. They have a plan and they want to complete it. So this was something that I saw myself when I was, in this space in Concordia, when I didn't see many people. So this was the first thing that perhaps, validates what the research is showing us, that they are different. And I believe that at our college, the adult learners that we do have, they're there. They're there in the morning. It's like a job for them. I have some courses at 8 o'clock. When I walk in, I see them, in areas of, they're sitting and they have their coffee and their books and they're ready for the class. They're always the first ones there and always the last to leave with always some questions, which is I could say it's a really great transition for a lot of teachers. Okay. Again, Knowles, who a lot of people believe that he's the one who did the theory on andragogy, self-concept and self-direction. When we think about our adult learners, they see themselves in the different roles that they carry. A lot of the adult learners that you might have in your classroom, have they have childcare they have to think about. They have, what do they look like to these other students, their dispositional barriers, and what about the institutions, what they offer them. So they have an idea, they know what they want, and they're very self-directed in their own education. We always talk about experience when we're talking about the adult learner. They bring in prior knowledge and they bring in their experiences into the classroom. Granted, because they've been out of school for a little while, let's face it, a lot of stuff has changed, but we as teachers have to try to direct them into taking that prior knowledge and putting in today's academic scenarios that we have right now. We talk, I know maybe some of you have this too. I find that when we have adult learners, they're very respectful. They like to call you miss, or they put their hands up, they don't interrupt, and they're very focused on their work. So this is something that's new. When they see the students calling the teacher by the first name, or the teacher being very, relaxed with the students, they have a little bit of issues with that. So that's something that we as teachers have to make them realize, that we're no longer in a teacher-centered environment. It's more student-centered. And it takes them time, but eventually they grasp it. But one of the things I've also realized with students, and I had during one of my midterms yesterday, one of the adult learners, she got very frustrated because we were online doing the exam and they kept talking. And she said, she was very upset. And she says, I'm here to do my exam, not to listen to you ask questions to the teacher. So this was quite interesting. And I spoke with her after, and she said, first of all, it's disrespectful for you and it's disrespectful for us. They should know the material when they come to class, which was quite interesting. Okay. Now, one of the things about our self-directed adult learners is their readiness to learn. They have to be ready to learn a specific topic and understand how it's going to affect their life. So there has to be some type of relevance when they come back to school. What is their goal? And one of the things that we need to ask them is, how can I help you and create strategies for the goals that you want to achieve? So we are no longer the teacher, we're more the guide. We hear a lot of, that's a big buzzword now, facilitator, but we have to guide these students because we need to take, their prior knowledge, their experiences, and their expectations at the same time. One of the other points we're going to pick up here is the orientation to learn. Similar to the point of readiness, adult learners, because they have to change their lives, they have issues in their lives that they want to change. They come from problem-centered, performance-centered perspectives. They're very competitive. They want to learn. They want to have great marks, and they will contact you before, the class or the midterm to see what do they need to do today, what extra work could they have. So I think that's something that's quite interesting because they're their love of learning for whatever their goals are. It really focuses on the other students too. So the students, I think, I find that the non-traditional students have a great impact on the traditional students, because they not only guide them and mentor them, they also learn from each other. So this is a great point when you've got the non-traditional and the traditional students in the classroom. Need to know if they're going to invest time in themselves, because remember, when they come back to school, they're investing in themselves. It's an investment for a better career, a better way of thinking, a better way of learning. So this is very important for you to find out what it is and why they're there. And the motivation to learn. A lot of them have extrinsic motivation, like going back to school for more money, a better job, right? So we have to take that into consideration. Or are they there for some type of their own self-recognition? When we think about a lot of adult students that come in firstly for external factors, get a better job, that's what motivates them to do and to be. But at the same time, the ones they do get a sense of an intrinsic factor, such as, feeling good about themselves, being self-regulated, and these type of factors that I find they grasp very, very quickly. Because we're not going to, unless they participate and they want to tell you, a lot of them don't tell you why they came back to school. It's sometimes personal, but at the end, when they get familiar with you, they usually tell us why they're there, and they appreciate why they're there. I also do a lot of training in adult education, and a lot of the students that come back, the teachers that are going to teach these adult learners. And one of the things I always tell them is, you have to work with them. You have to be comfortable with them. You have to listen to them, and you have to try to understand where they're coming from. For a lot of our students, especially the adult ones, you have to realize that the teacher is younger than them. Could that be an issue for the student? We have to take a look at their background. And all of this is voluntary on the student themselves. So the more they feel comfortable with you, the better it's going to be for the classroom and for them at the end of all this. All right. So as a webinar, this is not something that we can, go off for 15 minutes and start, doing some activities. But I'd like maybe you could work with Nicole and I, and we could put it in the chat based on the assumptions selected. Describe how a teacher can provide instructional strategies to best accommodate adult learners' expectations. So what do you think? How can you as a teacher, or perhaps a pedagogical advisor, provide your teachers with instructional strategies to best accommodate adult learners' expectations and experiences? Anybody want to jump in and we could go through this?
Yes, so I invite participants to write their answers in the chat module. Take your time.
So Nicole, I think that it's going to be fun for us to discuss some of the stuff that we hear in the chat, right? We're going to listen to what we have to say. It should be quite interesting.
And as the chat will be sent.
And the chat, Nicole,
we'll have the occasion to read the other comments after.
Okay. So here.
Okay, so Marie-Maude wrote, prepare very concrete activities to link it to real life situations.
Okay, that's a very good comment, because real life scenario is very, very connected with adult learners. Making your activities and your strategies and your group, your class objective functions on real life, because they can bring in these experiences that they have, right? And bring all the information with them and share that with the others in the classroom. And that really brings on a really good, robust conversation with everyone in the classroom. Is there another question, Nicole?
There are other, other texts. Gabrielle Baudet wrote, we could ask students what they want to learn and build on that. Geneviève Dumas wrote, take the time in class to ask them When are their objectives? Why are they there? Julie Bélan, I use what we call in French, évaluation authentique, real life situation of what the student is going to have to do in the future.
These are all excellent strategies straight out of, being in the classroom, asking the right questions. I think when we talk about we've discussed it a few times, people have mentioned the real life scenarios, bringing what they know, because one of the things we have to realize that a lot of these students come into class and the question they ask themselves is, do I have the academic experience like these students? Do I have the educational background? And the best way that you as the teacher can make them feel part of this group is to let them discuss what they know, what they have an advantage on, and being able to share that with the class. And again, yes, ask them what their goal is. And you're going to see a big change from the first day that they come into the class with you compared to when they leave. If we were we are having a webinar, but one of the things I do when I do these workshops is I go through all the students that we have and I say, okay, what's your name? And what do you expect from the class? And they're quite surprised because they ask, well, aren't you supposed to tell us what you expect? And I always say, no, what are your expectations? And I write it down, and the name is so important because you're making a connection with them. And I find that when we do it at workshops, I've done one last June at AccuPC, and I said, we're going to make this interactive as if it was a real classroom. And you'd be surprised how the students appreciate that we recognize their name, and we appreciate knowing what do they want from the classroom. And we can build our curriculum. One of the things I'm working on is thinking about how can we rebuild a curriculum based on for adults, right? We have our ministerial course outlines with all the competencies, but how can we take this and tweak it that students, adult learners, and students with adult learners and the traditional learners can get the best out of it through our real life scenario education.
I like the two comments, one from Alison Kurtz, a lot of transparency, for example, concrete course outline and class time agenda with purposeful activities, a preview to what is next and allow room for a collaborative project design. And Julie Bélan wrote, take time to know the student, bird from what they know, make them teach to each other.
That's very good, because when they teach, like, mentoring, I could say, peer teaching, peer evaluations, bringing in their knowledge into the classroom, and collaborative learning is amazing, because sometimes it's hard, and maybe you've seen this in your class, not everybody wants to be with the adult student. Now, we can't force them. We have a lot of group projects at my college, and we can't really force them together, and say, okay, you're going to go with this one. And we always have that student that doesn't have anyone to be with and always says, can I do the project alone? And I ask them, why would you want to do the project alone? It's a lot of work. And it's not that they don't know the content, or they want to work by themselves, or they have multiple things going on in their lives. So that would be a good answer, right? Like, I work in the middle of the night because I have my kids to take care of, and I have my work. So you would understand that. But the answer I get more and more now is nobody wants to be with me. And I find that surprising, because and it's not someone that's a first semester student, someone that's a fifth semester student. We have 6 semesters. We have a 3-year program at the college. And I find that, like, so what have you been doing with yourself? And how have you been working on these projects? Because let's face it, doing a project yourself, there's a lot more work if it's a group project. And this isolation that, you don't have brainstorming, you don't have ideas to share, can sometimes be a little bit hard on them. So the ideas you're bringing, know their objective, collaborative learning, real life scenarios. These are amazing tools that we can use when we are working with adult learners. So again, now that you're in the chat, I just want to, maybe you can answer Nicole on this. How many of you have adult learners in your classrooms or at your college?
So please enter in the chat module. Okay, Geneviève and Marie-Maude wrote I do, as Julie aussi, too. Natasha too aussi.
Do you find that we were talking about curriculum before, I think someone mentioned curriculum, and do you find that it's like you're making two different sets of notes, two of everything, because the overlap between the two students sometimes can be a little bit difficult? So do you need to make one course outline, one activity calendar, activities for the class? Do you find sometimes you need to work on trying to assimilate everything together?
Olivier wrote, I have an average of 20% adult learners. So your class contains adult learner and young learners, I think.
Yeah. So 20% is a lot, right? Depending on your class size. That's a lot when we think about how are we going to integrate these students. They don't want, are we going to put them together? Like, are we going to put all that 20% of the class together? Is that our goal here? Are we, like segmenting them already? Are we like saying no? So we need to come up with an idea. I tell my students, like, should we do a random, random assignment? And they tell me no. Can we pull their names out of a hat? They tell me no. And I say, would you like me to assign? No. So what do we do? Like, and you see the students, it's very disappointing. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting much more out of Mio now saying, is it okay if I do it alone? I hope we can find better solutions to this. We can't force them together, right? But we can also, help. I'm going to tell you a real story. This is why I got into this for my PhD, is when I was in my core courses at the university, we had to do, in teams and groups, it seems to be everywhere that you've got to be working with someone, collaborative learning. And you're saying, wow, this is going to be fun. I'm going to get to know people. First thing you say, what do you do? And what's your name and all that kind of stuff. But I also noticed that being an outlier in this group, we were five adult learners in a class of 30, and it was very difficult to assimilate. Do you have another question there, Nicole?
There is a comment coming from Alison Kurz, often going back to the competencies and performance criteria assigned to the course, matrix, course outline, and making the links between the competencies and assessments and evaluation very clear to them. I think this helps orient the busy adult learner by helping them focus their energy on developing specific skills and knowledge, and thereby helps ensure learning outcomes the course was designed for.
Excellent, Allison. This is a very good idea because we're looking at the competencies, we're doing what we have to do, but we're changing a little bit of the dynamic in the class. And this is something that we have to get ready for, because I believe more and more students are coming into school. I was looking at Statistics Canada, and one of the things post-COVID is a lot of traditional students are taking a year off, or they're not going back as quickly as we had anticipated. However, a lot of the registration and a lot of the students coming back are adult learners. So the curriculum, the competencies, they're there, but we need to, like Allison says, we need to accommodate the change in, these things we have to evaluate our students. So far, so good. Thank you so much. We're going to move on here too. Okay. One of the things for us is transformation. Now, a lot of people say, why do you talk about that so much? Because there is change. We think about people when they go back to school, they walk in the classroom and they say to themselves, why am I here? But when we look at adult learners, we have to think one of the first questions, and a lot of the literature shows this, is they come in with, I can't live like this anymore. They believe they need to learn, they need to get, basic skills, basic literacy. Also, society is changing and job demands are changing. We look at the situation now that there's a lot of people looking for workers, right? But my question is, have these workers, have these employers really changed their standards of a pre-COVID employee to a post-COVID employee? As we are trying to change the curriculum, And the competencies, shouldn't the employers also, they should be changing what they assume the employee should be coming in as? And for the adult learners, a lot of them say, I want to change. I can't do this anymore. And the only reality that a lot of them face is, let me go back to school. Let me go learn something. Let me change my career. And we've seen through COVID and through the pandemic, how many people have changed their career, right? So these are the people going back. So things about transformation. Why do you think certain adults return to school? Talked about personal growth. We talked about career opportunities. What do you think motivates them? A lot of people think, oh, they're going back for more money. Yeah, maybe that's why they went there. They want better, status in their company. They want more money. But really, what motivates them? And this is something that we have to think about. What is motivating them to go back? What type of challenges, barriers, or obstacles do they face when deciding to return to school? And this is something that we should discuss a little bit. So this is something that I've been working on a lot and trying to find out what motivates you to come to school. Why did you come back to school? And yeah, you're here now. What are some of the challenges that are not going to let you finish, right? So we talked about before the relevance of coming to school. It has to be relevant for the student to return. So what can we do to help them? And let's take a look at some of the challenges. And if you have heard of other challenges, please write them in the chat so that we can share. So here, we're looking at situational, especially for women. Remember, my research is on women, but this can expand to mature students in general, right? Financial situations, childcare, multiple roles. You're the employee, you're the mom, you're the dad, right? You're the driver, you're taking care of your parents. Right now, we are, living in a world of a sandwich population. A lot of people, they're taking care of their children, they're taking care of their parents, and they're falling somewhere in between. So how can we tell that person, you know what, go back to school. It's going to be good for you, right? Maybe that's an obstacle that they have that we have to find a solution for, okay? Because a lot of people realize that when they're doing something for themselves, it makes them feel better. Therefore, all these roles that they have to do, there's a positivity to it. So childcare, multiple roles, financial situations. One of the big things for adult learners when they go back to school is the dispositional barriers, attitudes and perceptions from others as looking too old to learn. And I had that said to me too. What are you going back to school for? You're too old. I said, I'm going back to school because I want to go back to school. And that's when I stop at period. A lot of them, they think they're too old. They lack confidence in their skills and abilities. We call that the looking glass theory. They think, oh, I don't know how to use it. My technology skills are not that great. Well, you know something? They'll be there. Someone will be there to help you, right? They think of their academic experiences from the past. And a lot of people that I've spoken to, they said, I wasn't really good in school. I really wasn't good in school. So I'm afraid, imagine if I go back to school with all the changes, like you'd be surprised that adult learners, when they go back to school, they do much better because they're so engaged in their work and they're getting so much out of it, right? Institutional policies. This is my new branch of my research here. The policies, the procedures, the situations that adult learners don't have access to. So if you're an adult learner, you worked all day, then you want to go to school at night because you're taking night courses. Is there anybody there to help you? Is there a pedagogical advisor there to help you? Maybe look at your project or maybe look at your work. Is your teacher there? Right? Do you have office hours that you can go through at night? So these are some of the policies that we have to think about. Do they have the required background information? Do they have their classes that the system has changed over the past couple of years. Do they have the right courses? Do they have to come back and take more courses before they can even enter the program? So look at all these challenges already: academic, past educational experiences, lack of prior prerequisites, right? These are things, what kind of a student is going to think, oh my goodness, I have 5 prerequisites in front of me? It's discouraging, right? We need to find ways to simplify for their lives. And how about sociocultural barriers, language, social stigma, cultural taboos, right? So imagine now you're thinking of going back to school. You did some activities on YouTube and you did some activities and you really are really good at it. Like you learned how to cook or you learned how to you know, a new language, or you learn how to do quantitative statistics, you know, and you say, you know what, I really, at this time of my life, I want to go back and learn. Look at what faces an adult learner. So I think when we look at the only person that can change this, you know, your childcare situation, the multiple roles, that's an individual thing that the person has to take upon themselves. The same thing with dispositional. Yes, we feel it's like the looking glass. So you look in the mirror right now and you say, is this what I look like? And is this what people perceive? It happened to me multiple times. When I would go take my courses at night, and you know, someone was putting up the projector, and the student said, there was a student, of course, putting up the projector, and she said to me, oh, are you the teacher? And I said, no, I'm the student. She says, oh, it's only for the teacher to come in. I thought, okay, so you already, you're being, it's because I should be the teacher, but I'm only the student. So think about all these different ways how we can help our students come in. You know, I was correcting some midterms this morning. I see language barriers there. I see ideas that you have to just tweak a little bit, but we can't tell them it's no good. You shouldn't be here. You have as much right to be here as everybody else, because what you having is the willingness to be here. And that's already something we have to take a look at.
On that topic, Geneviève Dumas wrote that geographic barriers for programs that are offered far away, it is harder to move when you have a house, a family, etc.
Absolutely. That's in your situational, you know, it's impossible, right? If you don't have a location that you can go to school, a physical location. And you know what? I don't know about you, but if you have students, even let's say adult learners, do they have a hard time taking online courses, or do they like it? I know in my experience, they put the camera on and they're there. How about yourselves? Do you find that it's a struggle? Because, you know, online learning has been around forever. You know, we have different institutions that have been from the 50s and 80s and that have put in online learning. Look, we look at Phoenix, you know, in the United States, they have so many programs, you know, put around the student, which is amazing. So we have to think about that too. Should we start building programs that accommodate the student? That would be something we have to think about. And like Geneviève said, if you're not going to sell your house and move to the city because you don't have it offered in your town. So these are things we have to think about too. And who controls that are the institutions. So these are things, and again, as CEGEPs, we should go back to our mission statement and have people come back to school so that they can learn. We have a wonderful opportunity here in Quebec that we offer CEGEP, but we should go back to our mission statement and say, I'm here to learn a new skill. And be it pre-university, be it something that you always wanted to do. Okay.
We had a lot of comments.
Okay.
Okay. Geneviève Dumas. For your question, Alison wrote, depends on each person. Flexibility and choice is good. Natasha allows them more flexibility. Geneviève depends on the students. Some of them really like it. Some of them really hate it. Okay. Also depends on the topic. Chemistry might be harder than a language class to do remotely. Julie wrote a lot more flexible and adult ask for it. Gabrielle, I myself am an adult learner and wouldn't enroll in a program if it wasn't online. Okay, interesting. Susie wrote, it depends. Some like the flexibility, but others enjoy the genuine encounters they have in person.
The big word that keeps coming out, the common word, is flexibility. And that's what we have to think about. You know, when I did some of my research, I found out that flexibility is so important. And when we think about how can we have more students come in and be successful, and also for the CEGEP, we have to think about the rate of retention, right? We want them to stay. We want them to learn. That's what we're there for. So when you ask some of these students, And again, like some of we had a student, one of the participants here said they're a mature student. Yeah, not everybody wants to do online. Let's face it, they like more like, you know, being one-on-one. And that's something about adult learners. They like to be more in the physical classroom, but they still do it online if it's the only option. But when we talk about flexibility, you know what? Yes, all the courses that are available 6 to 11 or 6 to 10 or whatever. However, why don't we extend the time a little bit? Because if you finish work at 5 and you're coming by metro, bus, or car, it's impossible to get there on time. And do you always want to be the person that's the last to come into the class? That's already going to be stressful. So flexibility is something we really have to start thinking about. There's so much good stuff that we're thinking about here that the change has to happen if we want to make people come back to school and stay. So some of the stuff that these students, when they were surveyed, said, teachers can structure classroom learning, implement various teaching techniques, and stimulate discussion. One of the things I realized about adult learners, they love storytelling. They love to talk about the story, and they love the story. You know why? Because they love to bring in their examples and their prior knowledge and their experiences. And that's one of the things that's really exciting in the classroom, is when this discussion starts going towards what they can bring in. So it makes it an equal field for them. They value teachers who are approachable and available and who are flexible with deadlines and class activities. Adult learners also find it essential for teachers to value and validate their experiences and be sympathetic to the demands placed on them by their jobs and families. You know, like we just said before, maybe we want, instead of being 6 to 10 or whatever it is, why don't we do a Saturday class? What would be wrong with a Saturday class? You know, they would be there, right? So if we think and look at content programs in universities, they have Saturday classes and the students show up, right? So we need to be flexible. And I think all of you, from your comments, you agree. Flexibility is how we're going to get them and keep them. Regarding teacher attitudes, adult learners appreciate teachers who are fun and enthusiastic and listen to student views. Now, when I had put this point out at another workshop, one of the teachers said to me, fun and enthusiastic. Like, I'm not saying, like, when they talk about fun and enthusiastic, a teacher that shows their passion for the content, right? There's certain courses we all teach, and there's certain courses the students see the passion, how much we love it. And that can be contagious, you know, like some of the courses, there's one specific course that I teach and I love it. And the students, they love it too. And you can see that it's contagious and they're talking about stuff, and it's so exciting to see this. So fun and enthusiastic is not making jokes all day, and it's more seeing the passion and being able to share that passion with your students. So again, approachable. I think in this, the student-centered approach, teachers are approachable, they're available. And that's when we go back, like, is there somebody in this empty school that I could talk to that could help me? So again, all of these different, things that these adult learners are coming up, they can be fixed. There has to be flexibility in the system. Okay. So best practices. Create a safe, welcoming learning environment, right? Safe. When I say safe, what comes to mind when I say safe to you? Is there anyone, Nicole, that's answering? A safe learning environment.
Okay, Susie wrote non-judgment. Okay, where people can share and ask, no judgment. It seems very important.
Yeah.
No shame, yeah.
Yeah, anybody, because like you're saying, Susie, it has to be safe that you walk in and you say something that they're not going to turn their eyes at you and say, oh, brother, you need, as the teacher, to make sure that it's a good welcoming area, create a culture of empathy, respect, approachability, and authenticity. Care about the students, respect the students, be approachable, be yourself. One of the things I find when I read these 4 characteristics of what they're looking for, I think if you're yourself, be you, all of these things will come out. That's the way I feel about this. And collaborate on the diagnosis of learning needs. I think we spoke about that a little bit before, that ask them what they want to do. base your course on what they want. Once you ask them their expectations, it's going to be easy to have a great class with people learning about what they want to learn about. So anybody have any comments so far about what we're talking about? You know, collaborate on developing learning objectives in an instructional planning, like we talked about before, and ensure the practicality of all learning activities. Is it easy to do? Hands-on approach that you had, bring in real life scenarios. So all of these different practices that we can put into the classroom not only helps the adult learner, I believe it helps the whole class. And you know what? It helps you too, because the class has a great flow to it. Anybody else want to add something in here? Anything, Nicole?
Geneviève Dumas wrote, those 5 items help our students no matter their age. I think she's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it. Like, it makes a better classroom, right? Because today we have a lot of students that COVID wasn't good for them, let's just say, right? And we need to bring them back in the classroom in a safe space that we're listening to them and make them feel that they're part of the group, that they're important in the classroom. Anyone else would like to contribute?
You can answer in the chat. For the moment, no comment.
Okay, good. Is you know why? Usually when we do our workshops, we have a lot of like, you know, talk a little bit more. So I'm just slowing down the pace a little bit, which is fine. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. This is a lot again, but we're going to put it together. So I'm going to ask you these things. Teachers should facilitate learning. Teachers should provide autonomy and independence, and teachers should empower learners. These 3 points, right? Facilitating it, guiding the learning, making them be more independent, and be empowered. What does that mean for you when you think about these 3 points? So maybe
okay, Mary Maud wrote autonomy. Geneviève teaching them how to learn.
Yeah.
Teachers are guides.
Yeah.
Alison stands out to me. Susie guiding students towards critical thinking. That's all for the moment.
Okay, because you brought out keywords, guide, right? Critical thinking, self-evaluation. Critical thinking, self-evaluation, guide. What about reflection? A lot of students, reflection is a big part of learning. You know, many students, they get their grade and they say, I don't understand. Well, if you tell them and you give them the feedback, oh, I get it. They need to reflect. You know, I believe students need to become responsible. They need to become accountable and find ownership. And this is what brings autonomy, independence. And this is what we're trying to foster in our community, right? We're trying to have independent learners, lifelong learners, people that are curious. You know, curiosity is something that I think that we lack, like imagination. What do you think about that? Like when you think about imagination and creativity is another big, you know, thing that we have to give our students, but shouldn't it come from the students themselves sometimes I tell the students, what if I had to give you a scenario, what is imagination for you? But imagination comes from wants, right? Like you think about young children when it's Christmas or their birthday and they're looking and they want, and they're imagining all these things that they can do with these, these toys or whatever they're going to get. Imagination. And I always tell them a story about a woman I knew very long ago, and she always used to tell me, she said, she used to buy the 649 every week. And she said, I said, do you think you're ever going to win? And she says, I don't care about the winning. She said, what I do is for that week, I think of all the things I could do with the money.
Okay.
That's pretty good, right? So that's what I tell the students. Don't think about the end game. Think about all the stuff in between that it's flourishing in you. So these are things empowering. That's very important too. Like to have the want to learn, to be able to feel in control of your life. So anybody else want to add on to this? We're good.
Okay.
Please jump in if you have something.
No comments for it.
Okay. So again, if this was an activity based on teaching methods to support adult learning, develop an activity to engage adult learners in your classroom to be transferable to all students in your class. We talked about that, the transfer of knowledge to all students, right? Because I think when we're giving them labels like traditional student, non-traditional student, are we really helping them or hindering it? They're already walking into the class, you go on the right side, you go on the left side, and I'll stay in the middle. Is that something that we need to support? I think Allison was talking about we need to make sure that when we're making our curriculum and we're making our activities and our calendars, and we need to follow the competencies, but make that class for everybody, right? And I think it's a great way for everyone to be able to understand together. The younger students are bringing in what they know now, and the experiences from prior knowledge. What a great assimilation of information. Any comments on that? Anything that you would think? I know we brought in some teaching methods at the beginning, but if you had to develop an activity, would it be a spontaneous activity?
Okay, Suzy Bouchard wrote, I like what you said about reflexivity. Instead of telling students what to think about material, it's interesting to get their impression first. This was for the last question. Okay.
Good.
This can be empowering.
Okay. So I think we're all on the same track here, that we need to make them start, all students think about, what is my goal here? Why am I in class? Like not only adult learners, and my assumption here is that we have to make sure that everybody feels safe. And that means you're not separated or segmented, like we say in marketing, from other students. So this is some of the information that I've picked up as a teacher. I've been a teacher for a long time, and with changing in how students come to class, their expectations in general, it kind of gives us a heads up now when we have our adult learners coming into the classroom with us. So what I'd like to do is anything that you want to add to this. It's been a great discussion so far, and I think that we're all on the same page, that we talk about having to integrate all of these students, right? And they're just like everybody else. And sometimes I think a little bit more expectations. So that's already fun. When I go through, what's your name and what do you expect? Oh my goodness, they give me a list, right? So anyone else want to add to that?
Please comment in the chat module. I would like to precise that Natasha wrote, the teaching method should provide autonomy and independence about content, times, etc.
Absolutely.
Any tips about preparing adult learners for evaluation?
Yeah. Do you have tips that you'd like to put in, Jen? Or are we going to share the tips? It would be great if we could share tips, because we're all on, looking at the same type of scenario. One of the things I tell them is I need examples. Like, give me the theory, the theory and the practice, like we call it, right? Give me the theory, but give me an example. And it's not to know your life story. It's giving me an example of something. These are some of the things I tell them. Could you provide an example? And you know what? It's in the example you really see if they understand it or not.
Natasha, if you want, you can talk. Okay.
I didn't want to talk, but I'm wondering if other teachers have tips, because sometimes it's like the breaking point, or they doesn't see the necessity of evaluating the competencies.
You don't see the necessity, like you have to make sure that the competencies are covered. That's what you're saying, Natasha, right?
Yes, we do, but adult learners sometimes don't see the necessity.
Okay, in what? Okay, so they don't see the necessity of the competencies, right? Why should they have to achieve this or complete this in order to pass, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, because I think also the system that they probably their prior academic experiences was not set up the same way as we have it, and depending on their background, they have to be integrated into what we're doing. And I agree with you, Natasha. Sometimes we go through the sheet of the competencies on the first day of the course outline, and also the way that it's written, right? You have to bring it into the context of what the student understands, because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to interpret. We have to show them, like, okay, this is what this means. So this is the government, I said, these are the academics talking, and this is what they're wanting from you. But let's talk about, what do you see in here? And then we see, it tells you demonstrate objectivity. So what does that mean, to demonstrate objectivity? These are, when you talk with them, not only about the course content, what I've done, and I agree, and it's not only adult learners, it's what does that mean? Why do I have to do that? Because in order for you to achieve this goal, these are the things you need to cover. But you have to work that same thing with them. What does this mean to you? So you're giving them reflection, you're giving them an idea of, okay, what does this mean? And it's bringing out something. And then we can see that some of them don't understand. I'm sure, Natasha, you see that. But it kind of gives them a basic terminology, a basic language that they see, okay, this is what it means. I'll give you an example. When they ask me, well, why did you give me a 3 on 5? If it's a 20-point question and I give it on a 5, was one of them will say that demonstrate objectivity. So I tell them, so what does that mean to you? What is objectivity? That I have I'm not making any judgments. I said, so take a look at what you did. Do you see that you made some judgments? You're giving your own, opinion. Is that what this is telling you? So again, then they say, oh, I get what you mean. And then you have to walk them through it. Now the competencies are, I'm in fashion, right? So the competencies are often difficult to convince fashion students. Well, what does that mean? I am objective. I understand the core to demonstrate clarity, different things are going on at the same time. So what I do with them is I definitely go through all my students, the competencies, and tell me what it means in the regular words. That's what I do. But again, it's not easy. I know one of the challenges we have at the college is that adult learners come in and think they know more than the teacher, right? How do you fix that problem?
Here is another interesting comment coming from Geneviève Dumas. Since adult learners often have to learn again how to be a student, and I agree with that, as I was an adult learner a long time ago, and since traditional students need to learn how to be a post-secondary student, I teach learning strategies in class when I'm teaching disciplinary content. Alison wrote, students need to be aware of what a subject program is and how to situate their course into their program. Taking a look at the program's exit profile with them and then linking your course to the exit profile and validating it as a leverage. I think having a big picture helps.
You're right. So they see the big picture. And that's, they, like we say, and I think, Allison, that's very good, because these students need to think about, they come in wanting to know about the relevance. Like, I'm only going to do this, I'm going to do this course because of this. So if you're able to show them how these competencies must be achieved, right, then we're in good shape. So these are some of the things that I think bringing in also experiences. I'm going to give you an example. I know we're kind of running out of time, but the courses that I teach in the fashion marketing program are all product based. My favorite course is textiles. So I love textiles, about fibers and yarns. So a lot of students, you know, they do communication, they do social media, all these marketing courses and all this. And they ask me, well, what do I need textile for? So I say, well, you know what? We also have, you know, the culinary school. We have cooking classes, you know, cooking courses for students, like culinary programs. And I say, okay, so if you were in that program and you ask the teacher, well, why do I need eggs and flour? And what do I need to know about eggs and flour to bake a cake? What would he tell you? And they said, yeah, you're right. So I said, if you're going to be making garments for the fashion industry, you need to know what fabric is, right? So that relevancy is there. So they make the connection, but it's hard to try to make them make that connection, right? And we try hard to do it and to make it the competency that they understand it. But I agree, Allison, too, they have to realize that the CJEP program is a wonderful place for them to learn, taking from their prior knowledge, and if they want to go even further with that, but they need to make the connector in the CJEP program. And I still believe that we need to go back to the mission statement of what is the CJEP system and implement that with these new adults coming in. And I also believe some of our traditional students too, who, what's your goal? Why are you here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I put here 5 categories, which I thought would be good for us to think about. Self-directed learning provides students with the opportunity and the freedom to choose the meaning of acquiring knowledge that is best suited based on their self-knowledge. Active learning, very popular now. It's been trending for a while. Like active learning, some students, they like the concept of active learning, of the interaction, of collaboration, of, you know, bringing in real life scenario to improve their critical thinking, like we talked about that. So I think that is one of the things that works, you know, the active learning. We're not just sitting them there and watching the time go by for them. Experiential learning brings us back to our real life scenario. For me, this is the best. I try in my college, we bring in people from the industry. We try to have how the industry works, and they love it. They really, really learn from that. We can talk about collaborative learning. I think we're all on the same page with collaborative learning. It works. It works. And narrative learning, you know, the link between lived experiences and, you know, curricular content. Bring in your experiences, and we could, by personal stories, like I told you before, they love storytelling. It lets them talk, lets them reflect. So these are some of the ideas that I use. But I think what seems to be in general of our conversation here is that we need to make sure that they understand the relevancy of the course. They need to understand the content, making sure that the curriculum is clear for them, and facilitate their learning. Any other comments or something that you want to add? So just a question for you of the barriers that the adult learner has. Let me go back to that before we finish here. Which do you think is the one that we should be really focusing on and paying a lot more, you know, energy as teachers, or, you know, as policymakers, or, you know, I always believe we need to triangulate the teacher, the student, and the administration. Do you think there's something here in particular that we really have to work on when we look at adult learners and their challenges? And they probably are the same challenges that, you know, traditional students have. Which do you think is the one we should focus on the most, or two that you think are quite important here?
For the moment, no comments.
Okay.
It is 10 minutes. Okay, Alison, we need to focus on what we can control or have influence on, which is not the previous knowledge and competencies of our students.
Okay. They have to start fresh, right? They need to come in with something, but we need to unlearn that and then relearn it, right? They need to learn, they need to do that. Anything, any other comments?
No, it is 1:11. I think teachers are going to their courses.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. I was quite great to share this information with you.
It was I would like to thank you, Heather, for this webinar. It was very interesting. It was lively. It was very, very interesting, and it was informative. It was inspiring, and I hope we will have the opportunity to exchange together again. So thank you very much for your presentation. And for the participants, please don't forget to answer the appreciation form that will give us feedback on the webinar from the other webinar. So it is that. Thank you, and I hope I said, and I repeat, we'll have the occasion to meet again.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole, very much.
Thank you
for your technical support.